Because if they could get him to say the right thing, they could use his mouth.
TD Jake just handed over America's biggest church to his daughter. The same daughter who became a teen mom at 14. But that's not why people are talking. A producer suing Diddy mentioned Jake's name in court documents. Then a man from the 1980s came forward with accusations. Jake fired back with his own lawsuit. Between the billion-dollar deals and the near-death experience on live TV, something bigger is happening at the Potter's house. And the real story is just starting to break. Thomas Dexter Jakes was born on June 9, 1957 in South Charleston, West Virginia. His father, Ernest Jakes, Sr., ran a small janitorial business. His mother, Odith, was a teacher. They worked hard, but life was never easy. Thomas was the youngest of 3 children. Their home was in a poor black neighborhood where racism and struggle were part of everyday life. Money was tight. Opportunity was rare. But in that pressure, something powerful was forming. His parents taught him to work hard, believe in himself, and never back down. That mindset would shape everything he became later. As a boy, Thomas had a lisp so strong that most people thought he'd never become a preacher. But that's exactly what he wanted. He would preach to stuffed animals in his bedroom and trees in his backyard. He was just a kid, but the fire was already there. Some classmates laughed at him. Some adults rolled their eyes, but he kept going. They started calling him Bible Boy. He didn't care. Every day he practiced. He imitated the preachers he heard at church and worked on his speech nonstop. He didn't just want to talk. He wanted to move people. That early passion became his armor. Then everything changed. When Thomas was 10, his father had kidney failure, the kind that slowly steals someone from you. Back then, treatment was limited, especially for black families in West Virginia. His father grew weaker. Thomas and his mother became his caregivers. It was more than a child should handle. But he had no choice. He had to grow up fast. He did the chores, took care of his siblings, missed school, but he never complained. Watching his father suffer left a mark on him that would never fade. It taught him how short life can be and how deep family love must go. 3 years later, the pain got worse. In 1973, Thomas was just 16 when his father died. The family was devastated. Emotionally, financially, everything collapsed. Thomas had been working at the Union Carbide plant part-time to help out, but now he had to take on more. He and his brother did any job they could find. Some days they didn't know how they'd eat. But even in that darkness, Thomas didn't stop preaching. Small churches, tiny crowds, no money, just his voice, his faith, and his fire. Losing his father made him a man before he was ready, but also pushed him closer to his calling. In 1976, at age 19, Thomas preached his first real sermon. In 1979, he was officially ordained. It was a big step for a young man who had faced so much. The lisp was still there, but didn't matter anymore. People listened because they could feel he had lived every word he said. He wasn't just quoting scripture. He was bleeding it. He worked regular jobs during the day and preached wherever he could at night. His life didn't look like a success story yet, but the foundation had been laid. Something bigger was coming. That something took shape in 1981. Thomas was invited to speak at church revival in Beckley, West Virginia. That's where he met Sarita and Jameson. She was born August 19, 1955. She was smart, respected, and already doing ministry work. But her past was filled with pain. Her brother had been murdered in front of his children. She had suffered abuse in earlier relationships. Still, she showed up to hear Thomas preach. That night, something clicked. She was drawn to him. Smitten, people said. They started talking. 6 months later, they were married. Fast, raw, real. That wasn't just love. It was destiny. Their marriage wasn't easy. Far from it. In the beginning, they were broke. Sarita worked nights as a Christian radio DJ, while Thomas preached by day. They had no money, but plenty of dreams. Then just 6 months in, disaster struck. A car accident crushed Sarita's legs and feet. Doctors weren't sure she'd ever walk again. But Thomas wouldn't let her give up. He helped her learn to walk all over again. Slowly, painfully together. That moment turned their marriage into something unshakable. Over time, Sarita became more than a wife. She became a partner in ministry, leading women's groups and writing books of her own. At just 23 in 1980, Jakes opened his first church, Temple of Faith Church in Montgomery, West Virginia. It had 10 members. That's it. No fame, no money, just belief. They rented a storefront. It was cold in the winter and hot in the summer. Bills piled up. Sometimes they collected empty bottles just to buy food. But the message kept spreading from Montgomery to Smithers to South Charleston to Cross Lanes and eventually to Dallas, Texas. What started with 10 people grew into the Potter's House. Over 30,000 members and one of the biggest churches in America. All because he didn't quit. While building that first church, Thomas still had to work. He clocked in at the Union Carbide chemical plant. Dangerous work. Welding chemicals, mining fumes, long hours, then straight to the pulpit. No rest, no breaks, just hustle. In 1982, the plant shut down. Jake lost his job. Things got worse. He dug ditches for his brother for $100 a day. Couldn't always pay the bills. Sometimes they had to choose between water or electricity. He and Sarita took turns covering one bill at a time. When there was no water, they borrowed bottles from a family. When there was no light, they used candles. But the preaching never stopped. In 1982, at just 25 years old, T.D. Jake took over a tiny church in Smithers, West Virginia. It was called Greater Emmanuel Temple of Faith, and it had only 10 members, just enough to fill a single car. Most people would have seen that as a dead end. But Jake saw something else. He and his wife Sarita had almost nothing. And so that through prayer and through books and writing. She even worked late-night shifts as a Christian radio DJ just to keep their lights on. But Jake kept preaching with everything he had. As a boy, he preached to imaginary crowds and earned the nickname Bible Boy. Now he was preaching to real people, real souls who needed hope. The church sat in a struggling, cold town. But Jake didn't focus on the poverty. He saw potential. In 1983, he held his first church conference. It was called Back to the Bible. 80 people showed up. That was 8 times the original size of the church. It was the first real sign that his message could reach far beyond Smithers. That same year, Jake tried something risky. He paid $45 for a 30-minute radio slot and launched a new program called Back to the Bible. It was a big gamble. His church couldn't afford it, but he believed in the power of the airwaves. His voice started to travel to cold towns, lonely homes, places where no preacher had gone. Listeners connected with him right away. His words were full of empathy and strength. Suddenly, the man who once preached to 10 people was being heard by hundreds. That little radio program changed everything. It made him a local celebrity, a voice people waited to hear every week. It also set the stage for what was coming next. By 1988, Jake knew he needed to grow beyond his storefront church. That's when he joined a Pentecostal denomination called Higher Ground Always Abounding Assemblies. It was led by Bishop Sherman Watkins, a man who quickly became Jake's mentor and father figure. Watkins had started with just 11 people. He saw something in Jake that reminded him of his own journey. Joining this group gave Jake more than just a title. It gave him a wider audience, more resources, and stronger support. Their message matched his exactly, taking ordinary people and showing them they could serve an extraordinary God. With this new connection, Jake was no longer working alone. He had a network, a guide, and a path towards something bigger. Then came the moves. In 1990, Jake relocated his church from Smithers to South Charleston, West Virginia. It was a small city, but much larger than where he started. The congregation exploded from around 100 people to over 300. Jake didn't preach surface-level comfort. He spoke to those hurting, those addicted, those forgotten. By 1993, he made another bold move. This time to Cross Lanes, a mostly white middle-class suburb. It was unheard of for a black Pentecostal pastor to move into such an area. But it worked. His church grew to more than 2,100 members, and 40% of them were white. That was rare, almost shocking. But it proved Jake could break through barriers of race and class without watering down his message. In 1987, before these moves, Jake had already taken a major step. At just 30 years old, he was ordained into the bishopric. It was official. Dr. Quandarell Wilson laid hands on him at the Charleston Civic Center. That ceremony didn't just give him a new title. It gave him authority, respect, the ability to oversee more churches. He had proven himself through passion and persistence. Now the church acknowledged it with power and position. In 1993, everything changed again. Jake launched a weekly TV broadcast on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. It was called The Potter's Touch. Suddenly, his preaching wasn't limited to a room. It was in millions of homes. People across the country and even around the world began hearing his message. His style was direct, emotional, full of energy and truth. Just 3 years later, he moved to Dallas, Texas to keep up with the growth. By then, his show aired in over 100 countries. This wasn't just a ministry anymore. It was a movement. In 1994, he made another strategic leap. He partnered with Black Entertainment Television, BET. This gave him direct access to black audiences who rarely saw faith leaders like him on mainstream TV. He didn't just air sermons. He tailored them. He spoke on dignity, money, fatherhood, healing, and everyday survival. These messages reached millions across the U.S., the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe. People who had never stepped foot in church were suddenly glued to his voice. That same year, he launched the Manpower Conference, a space just for men. The first one took place in Detroit. Thousands came. It was raw, real, and vulnerable. Jake told men it was okay to feel pain, okay to break down, okay to heal. The conference kept growing. By 2011, over 9,000 men attended one event in Dallas. More than 150,000 men had come through since the beginning. Some flew in from Italy. That's how far his voice reached. In 1995, Jake took another risk. He started TDJ Enterprises. It wasn't just a business. It was a vision. Through it, he published books, produced films, and launched music albums. His first big film, Woman, Thou Art Loosed, became a box office hit in 2004. Then came Jumping the Broom in 2011 and Heaven is for Real in 2014. His books sold over 20 million copies worldwide. According to Black Enterprise, TJ Enterprises brought in nearly $400 million. He wasn't just a preacher anymore. He was a publisher, a producer, and a powerhouse. He even developed a $150 million housing project and opened a school in Dallas. From 1995 to 1996, Jake hosted a show called Get Ready. It aired on radio and television. It combined preaching, interviews, music, and live calls. It aired on TBN, BET, and across syndication. That made it one of the widest-reaching shows in religious broadcasting. Millions tuned in. The topics were real. Addiction, domestic violence, money trouble, broken homes, and Jake never held back. He didn't just preach from a pulpit. He talked to people in pain. He offered hope. He gave them a reason to keep going. In 1996, TD Jakes did something few pastors had ever dared. He left behind his growing church in small West Virginia town and moved to Dallas, Texas. He didn't come alone. He brought 50 staff members and their families with him. It wasn't just a move. It was a mission. On a 34-acre hilltop, he built something massive, the Potter's House. His old congregation had around 1,000 members, but in Dallas, he aimed for tens of thousands. The new campus had a 5,000-seat auditorium, offices, and room to grow, and it grew fast. By 2000, they had built a new sanctuary, 191,000 square feet, seating over 7,600 people, loaded with top-of-the-line technology. They paid it off in just 4 years. That's how quickly the momentum picked up. Even the very first service at the Potter's House felt like something big was happening. Over 2,000 people showed up. A brand new church, a brand new city, and still they came. Within a few years, they were holding 3 services every Sunday. By August 2000, more than 23,000 people were showing up weekly. What started as a leap of faith was now a phenomenon. The Potter's House didn't just grow, it exploded. Membership soared to over 30,000. Outreach magazine called it one of the biggest churches in the country. CBS News listed it as the 25th largest megachurch in America in 2018, with over 16,000 weekly visitors. Special events drew up to 70,000 online viewers. It wasn't just a church. It became a movement. What set it apart was the people. Nearly half the congregation was male. An unusual number for a church, especially one with a largely minority base, but that was the point. The Potter's House wasn't typical. It brought together people from every walk of life. The homeless, the formerly incarcerated, working-class families, and professionals. Jake made it clear everyone belonged. His Manpower conferences began drawing tens of thousands of men. His message reached across race, class, and gender. Then came Hurricane Katrina. In 2005, over 1,800 people died, and millions lost their homes. Jake didn't sit on the sidelines. He went to Louisiana with President George W. Bush. On September 5th, Bush thanked Jake publicly for helping rally what he called the Armies of Compassion. Jake urged the president to address poverty more directly. He wasn't just preaching anymore. He was advising the White House. And when Barack Obama was sworn in on January 20th, 2009, Jake was there too. That morning, he joined a small group of leaders for a private prayer at St. John's Episcopal Church. It was a quiet but powerful moment. He stood beside Joel Hunter and other religious leaders praying for the first black president in American history. That day, he wasn't just a pastor. He was a symbol of spiritual leadership at the highest level. But Jake didn't stop at the pulpit. In 1998, he launched the Metroplex Economic Development Corporation. It helped families buy homes, mentored young people, and gave hope to struggling communities. He also founded the Clay Academy, which focused on education and community uplift. These weren't just programs, they were lifelines for people who'd been left behind. Jake believed faith should lead to action. Then came television. In 2009, he partnered with Dr. Phil and CBS to launch a syndicated talk show. Big names were involved, big hopes, too. But the show never aired. The economy was unstable, and the project fell apart. Most people would have stopped there, but Jake tried again in 2015. This time, the TD Jakes show launched in 4 cities and then expanded to 50 markets. It mixed inspiration, celebrity interviews, and self-help. But by March 2017, it was canceled. Ratings were low. Still, Oprah Winfrey's network picked it up, giving him a new platform to continue his message. While all this was happening, his family was growing into a ministry of its own. He and his wife Sarita raised 5 children: Sarah, Cora, Jermaine, Thomas Jr., and Jamar. All of them are involved in ministry. It's rare. Most megachurch pastors can't say the same. Sarah and Cora became powerful preachers and authors. The others work in operations and media. They weren't just following their father. They were building their own paths in the same mission. Sarah's story is particularly powerful. She was born on July 17, 1988. At just 14, she became a mother. It could have ended her future. Instead, it became her message. After a failed marriage and raising her son as a single mom, she began blogging. Her honesty connected with people. In 2014, she married Pastor Tay Roberts. They now co-pastor churches in Los Angeles and Denver. In April 2025, Sarah and Tay were named the new leaders of the Potter's House in Dallas. From teen mother to megachurch leader, her life is a story of transformation. Then there's Cora. From a young age, she dreamed of having a son named Nehemiah. At 22, she was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, which affects nearly 5 million women in the U.S. Doctors told her she might never have children. It was crushing. She fell into depression, but she didn't give up. She launched a blog called Fertility Faith to support other women like her. She became a minister and now leads the children's ministry at the Potter's House in Dallas. She adopted a daughter named Amore and still holds on to the dream of one day holding Nehemiah. Through pain, she found purpose. On April 27, 2023, the world of faith and finance collided in a way no one saw coming. Pastor T.D. Jakes and Wells Fargo joined forces in a deal that raised eyebrows and expectations. They announced a massive 10-year partnership that could funnel up to $1 billion into America's most overlooked neighborhoods. This wasn't some short-term charity pledge. It was a long-haul commitment, $1 billion in loans, grants, and investments, all aimed at changing lives in places most big banks usually ignore. Jake brought in not just his name, but the full weight of his empire: T.D. Jakes Real Estate Ventures, TJ Enterprises, and the T.D. Jakes Foundation. Wells Fargo's CEO, Charlie Scharf, didn't mince words either. He said this wasn't a one-time investment. It was about building long-term impact and real equity together. They weren't just writing checks. They were rewriting the rules. Then in 2024 and 2025, that billion-dollar promise started turning into action. The T.D. Jakes Foundation, with funding from Wells Fargo, gave out $18 million in grants to 29 groups across the country. The first $9 million went to 16 organizations focused on financial literacy, affordable housing, and career development. The next $9 million was announced in April 2025, supporting 13 more groups. This round put the spotlight on economic empowerment and workforce readiness. Some grants were massive. Wiley University, Paul Quinn College, and Morehouse College each got $1.5 million. They used it for new housing, campus improvements, and mental health services. The Lightship Foundation got $500,000 to boost entrepreneurs. Power 52 Foundation received the same amount for clean energy education. United Megacare also secured $500,000 to fight food insecurity. These weren't just donations. They were targeted investments in transformation. Kelly Cornish, CEO of the foundation, said it best. This wasn't just continuing the mission. It was a bold stand for opportunity. But just as the headlines were praising Jake for his community work, another kind of headline dragged his name into controversy. In early 2024, a federal lawsuit involving Sean Diddy Combs exploded in the media. The suit filed by producer Rodney "Lil Rod" Jones made serious criminal allegations against Combs: sexual harassment, drugs, and even sex trafficking. Jakes was never accused of wrongdoing, but his name came up. The lawsuit claimed Combs planned to use his connection with Jake to clean up his public image after being sued by Cassie Ventura for rape and abuse. Jake's name appeared only once, but that was enough. The press ran wild. Online theories erupted. People wanted to know what was the real connection. Even though Jake had no formal involvement in the case, the mere mention caused a stir that wouldn't go away. Then things got even messier. In October 2024, Pastor Dwayne Youngblood, a convicted sex offender, went on a YouTube talk show and accused Jake of trying to sexually assault him back in the 1980s. He said it happened when he was 18 or 19. According to Youngblood, Jake tried to kiss him and hugged him in a way he didn't want. These claims hit the internet like a lightning strike. Youngblood also sent Jake a letter through his lawyer demanding $6 million or he'd file a lawsuit. Jake's legal team responded fast. They called it extortion. They said Youngblood, who had been convicted twice, once in 2008 and again in 2014 for crimes involving minors, was just trying to repair his own shattered name. They called the accusations false, calculated, and malicious. A month later, Jake struck back. On November 25, 2024, he filed a defamation lawsuit in federal court. It wasn't just against Youngblood, but also others who may have helped spread the lies. The filing accused Youngblood of launching a coordinated smear campaign. Jake said the attacks had taken a toll physically, emotionally, and spiritually. In fact, just one day before filing the lawsuit, something terrifying happened. On November 24, 2024, while preaching live at the Potter's House in Dallas, Bishop T.D. Jakes collapsed mid-sermon. Thousands were watching in person. Thousands more were watching online. As he neared the end of an hour-long message, he started to shake. His hand dropped the microphone. He slumped onto a stool and then keeled over. It looked like exhaustion at first, but it wasn't. Jake had suffered a massive heart attack live on camera. The footage went viral. Church members rushed to help. Paramedics were called. Viewers from around the world watched the chaos unfold in real time. Later, doctors told Jake he had come dangerously close to dying. According to them, he was just 5 minutes from death. 5 minutes. If he had arrived at the hospital any later, he wouldn't have made it. The clot had blocked blood to the right side of his heart. Half his heart had stopped working. The only thing keeping him going during the sermon was adrenaline. Once he sat down, his body gave out. He was literally preaching with only half a heart working. What happened next changed him forever. Jake described a near-death experience. He said he felt like he left his body. He saw white clouds, silence, peace. "I was on my way out," he said. The world around him was chaos, but in that moment, he felt completely calm. He later called the experience a privilege, a spiritual moment that gave him clarity about what mattered most. That moment pushed him to make a major decision. On April 27, 2025, in front of his entire congregation, Jake made it official. He announced that his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and her husband Tay Roberts would be taking over as senior pastors. The Potter's House wasn't just any church. It was a global powerhouse with over 30,000 members and millions more watching online. Now it was entering a new era. Jake made it clear this wasn't retirement. This is not a departure. It's a rebirth. He said he wouldn't be stepping away from the pulpit entirely. He'd still preach, still lead, still guide. But the daily leadership would now rest with Sarah and Tay. He called it an expansion, not an exit. The transition had been years in the making. In 2022, Sarah and Tay moved from Los Angeles to Dallas. By 2023, they were assistant pastors preparing for this exact moment. Sarah had already built her own movement, Woman Evolve, focusing on empowering women around the world. And now the torch was being passed. This kind of transition is rare in megachurches. Usually changes come suddenly or after controversy, but Jake planned every detail. It was transparent, it was deliberate, and it was deeply emotional.